a podcast for dads who love music, made by dads who love music. And now, your hosts, Josh and Joe.
Hello, and welcome to Dad Rocks, the podcast about being a dad and loving music and how the two intersect in our lives. I'm Josh, and I'm here with my co-host, Joe.
What's going on, Josh?
And our producer, Steve.
Hey, guys.
On this episode, we are going to close out this insane year that is 2020. We'll be discussing our resolutions as parents and people in general, as well as talking about our favorite music from this year. We also have a special guest and, dare I say, co-host on today's show. Please welcome back to the show, Rob Mitchum. How you doing, Rob?
Good. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back for a second round.
Yeah,
thanks, man.
For sure.
If you don't remember, Rob was our very first guest when he came on to discuss the term dad rock and what dad rock is. And we're excited to have him back to discuss his annual album of the year data chart, as well as talk about his personal favorite albums of the year. Rob, how have you been in general? How's the pandemic been for you? How's life been for you since we last talked?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Every day feels like the same, though. Now we at least have some vaccine light at the end of the tunnel. So yep. I'm already checking all the estimates of when live shows might be coming back for next year and start counting down the days and hoping for some tour announcements. And I don't know, trying to look on the bright side of things.
And the 36 from the Vault is still going on, the podcast?
That's right. We just finished our second season of our podcast, going through the Grateful Dead Sticks Picks series. So Awesome. We're up through volume 18, which is the halfway points. My co-host Steve is working on a book, so we're taking a few months off here and resting our Grateful Dead ears and listening to other music for once. And we'll be back spring 2021.
Nice.
Very cool.
Did the Grateful Dead release anything this year? Was there anything like that came out, live stuff or anything? Or
So the successor to Dick's Picks is Dave's Picks. The current archivist is a guy named David Lemieux, who we had on our Volume 17 episode, if people want to check that out. Our first and only guest so far. So they do 4 of those a year for full live shows or sets of a couple shows every year. So the Grateful Dead, this is how they make their money now. They just keep releasing things from the archives. It'll never stop.
They must have a ton, too.
All right. Being that this is the end of the year, we're going to take some time to talk about how we want to improve on ourselves as parents and people in the coming 12 months. And if we're still recording this podcast after another journey around the sun, we'll see how we did. So who'd like to go first today to talk about their resolutions?
I'll take a stab at it, Josh. So in case anyone doesn't know, I have 2 kids, 13 and 9. So I feel like I always say I'm like in the thick of everything with those ages. A lot was going on this year, especially in the last few months. My son was on a new club soccer team. He was doing really good. He even was invited to like the A level after only a few weeks. We're really pumped up. And then everything shut down about a month ago, mainly due to where the club team was based. It was a super high COVID rate. So he was forced to stop that. And, we're in those throes of going to tournaments, going to games. Our whole weekend was like totally taken up by soccer, and then it shut down again. So one resolution is definitely to keep him going, keep him practicing. We live really close to our town field, and just keep him, active, because he was really in great shape. I mean, he's still in great shape, but he was training like a lot, 5-6 days a week. And he even noticed like the other day, he's like, Dad, I think I gained some weight. I mean, he really didn't gain. He's like super thin. But I'm like, I don't think you did, but he even feels it. So one resolution is definitely to get out there with them, try to keep practicing, keep, running and just doing some exercising. Same with my daughter, who's 9. She was playing soccer, and that ended as well. But she was playing a lot in town, not games, just practicing, but same thing, just keep her occupied, keep her, active. Again, we live really close to our like town park, so we could just walk there, and there's not many people. And for me as well, trying to get back in the exercising, mode and working out would be a good thing. So I try to get my kids to, push me a little bit there. both of them less screen time if possible.
Yeah.
Those ages are really, really hard to just keep them off screens, whether it's, if their phone or iPad or any other devices just around, of course, TV as well. But we just have so many things around the house, I feel now. I have an iMac. I have this laptop that I'm on now. We all kind of just share it. It's not just really mine. It's, they jump. If I'm on this, they're on the iMac, or my son has his own computer, or there's an iPad or a phone, or my wife's work phone that she's not using for that 1 second. And then, where's my work phone? Oh, she has it. It's like there's always some sort of screen. So.
Well, hopefully after a year of virtual schooling, they'll be, wanting to not use it.
And
much,
then there's school, by the way. Yeah, they're on school, they're on the computer for X number of hours staring at their teacher and classmates, that. So the main resolution I would say as a parent in 2020 is to, go outside, keep your kids, active as much as possible, off screens, at least for a portion of the day. And same with me too. I mean, I'm guilty as like everyone else of being on my phone a lot. And they call me out on it all the time.
Standard.
The total double standard, like a lot of other parents, like you're telling me not to be on the phone.
You got to explain you paid your dues and didn't have any screen time for a long time. And if you did, it was probably like, your parents had rules and stuff. Whereas now you're probably a lot more chill.
I don't know. I can see little Joe playing NES like for hours on end and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Good point.
I started with Atari in, 1982,
nice.
83.
Same.
So I go way back, but it was different, of course. It was totally different. And then one main resolution for here at our new house is we've been working on constructing our laundry room into a music room / hopefully like a podcasting recording type of room. And I play drums, and hopefully we're getting a new kit. And then also finally trying to teach my kids, hopefully if they're interested, how to play drums and hopefully get them into it. I haven't really had the opportunity because wherever we've lived, I haven't been able to have my drums. So it's been pretty hard with that. So I'm looking forward to that. It should be ready in about a month.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Who do you think will be more receptive of the two kids to learn drums?
It's really hard. I don't know. My son, who's 13, shows no interest in rock right now.
Yeah.
To my disappointment.
Yeah.
He's into hip hop. They're both really into like, they call it TikTok music, but that doesn't just mean new music. We'll be in the car and it could be any station, mainly like a pop station, but if even a classic rock station, a song could come on and they'll look at each other and go, that's from TikTok. It could be like Black Sabbath or something.
Wow.
I'm like, well, it's not from TikTok, but yes.
But that's how they discovered it. Yeah.
So that is what it's interesting.
Well, the Fleetwood Mac thing had a big.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
Right?
100%.
That's how Dreams became a hit
100%.
single.
Back in the top 10. It's unbelievable.
The guy just bought a house because of all the money he got
in
from
cash. Yeah, I don't know who will be more receptive to it. I really don't know, but.
Well, don't push them because, at some point they might, come around to it. And even if it's later in life, there's a lot of people who start later and they get really into it because it's a passion later on. Whereas, I can attest that I took lessons, was into it, and then was just kind of like, I don't want to focus on this, and kind of still played, but wasn't as adamant about it at a certain point. Whereas I know a lot of people who started later and became really good and you just focused on it a lot. So, give them time. They'll get to it.
I hope so. But even just for myself, I've been missing, and Josh is a drummer as well. Yeah. We both really have not had time or the ability to play drums, which is also, it's an instrument, but it's a very therapeutic physical instrument and not playing any gigs. Both of us are in bands, and playing drums was always my outlet from everything going on in life, just to be on stage and just let loose and let everything out for 40 minutes. So
absolutely.
Totally missed that.
Yeah.
So for me, being a semi-new parent, only, my son's just over 2, I've had to learn a lot about myself as a person and a parent. And my son's really starting to get his own personality going. And so dealing with that has put a lot of, frustrations on myself, and just, trying to recalibrate how I want to parent and thinking about, how I want him to react. So one of my biggest parenting resolutions is to not be so quick to get upset when he frustrates me. I'm someone who it can get frustrated really quickly. Just my own personality of like, if things aren't going the way that I want them to go, I get frustrated and upset pretty easily. So, I got to be better at understanding that, he likely won't do what I want him to do initially, that I have to talk to him in a calmer voice, not, get so easily frustrated and like, go from 0 to 10. That's something I kind of learned from my dad, who was not a mean guy. He just would get really upset really easily. So, trying to not give him that learned behavior so early on in life. And also, it helped me just be a better person in general to not get so upset. I got to keep my, teacher mode on a little bit longer, even then I get
it's very hard though. I mean, I know as a parent, it's like we all have quick fuses, and I feel like as I get older, we have quicker. Me and my wife kind of jump, and snap a little quicker because now it's like years are going by. Same, thing that they do, whatever it is. 10 years in, you're like, no, don't stop doing that thing, so we'll have to work on that for sure.
And to going back to the screen time thing, what's interesting is, whenever I'm around my son, for some reason, I've always been addicted to screens since I was younger with TV and everything like that. And actually, my parents never gave me a gaming system because of that, because I would just sit in front of the TV for hours. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have sometimes an issue of not putting my phone down when I'm around my son. So I need to do that. And he's actually started saying no phone when I'm around him. So,
and how old is he too? He's so young, and he knows. He calls you right out.
So I gotta
imagine
deal with
at 13.
Yeah.
Oh God, I know.
So I got to put that down. And actually, I remember like on election day, I was so anxious about what was going on. I literally turned my phone off and just kept it like off, and it felt so good not to look at the phone.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of, I got to do that more often. That's another resolution, is just to keep,
same here,
that phone off and just get disconnected sometimes. But, personally, like Joe said, exercise more. At the beginning of this, I was walking 2-3 miles a day with my son, but now with the winter, it's not great. I'd like to get back into running or playing tennis. I was playing racquetball for, a couple of years, but that's a pain in the ass to get to the courts and deal with and find people to play with. Being more active and just being more productive with my free time. Sometimes I find myself, I'm just sitting there and just play a video game, which is not like terrible, but I'll just sit there and play a meaningless video game for like an hour just for no reason other than I can't think of what else to do. So, do that. And like Joe said, obviously would love to start playing live music again. I really miss it. Going to see concerts again, trying to get back into, listening to a lot more new music and just getting that wheel going again, even though I know it'll be tough once real life gets back going. And then finally, is to keep this podcast rolling. I know it's going to be hard. I know, once life gets back into its regular format, it might be harder to do this, but hopefully we can keep doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see everybody next New Year's.
Definitely.
You want to go next, Rob? Because you're a dad.
I think a lot of overlap, actually. Like, I've gotten into indoor cycling more during this year. We got not a Peloton, but like the next cheaper brand down fancy bike. So I can, like, there's a cycling training game called Zwift.
Oh, nice.
Which like puts you in like a video game world, and you get to pedal around and race with other people and work on your personal times and stuff.
Whoa, that's awesome.
So I'm going to keep that up this winter, hopefully. And my goal is to do a century ride sometime next year. So do a 100-mile ride. Cool. Now, porting what I do in the basement to the outside world is going to be a little difficult. So I'm trying to put that off as much as I can, but it'll keep me going through the Chicago winter. And then, it's just like this year I've realized how much we take for granted as far as the activities and events we can take the kids to around Chicago. Yeah. Like, we have amazing museums and zoos and, all sorts of culture and things. And I really hope that I can keep that feeling of, how special it is to have those opportunities and take the kids out to do a lot more once it's safe to do so. They may not want to do as much as I want to do. It's a thin line you got to walk there between overstimulating them, I guess, because sometimes they just want to sit around and play video games too, which is fine. But, definitely want to try to hit up more museums and take them to some plays and take them to some concerts and like really take advantage of all these things we used to do in the before times that we can't do this year. So
yeah, definitely. So Steve?
Yeah.
What about you?
So, I kind of likewise seeing things for the big picture and seeing things that maybe I didn't take for granted, but I didn't take full advantage of. And so when I say see way more concerts, or when I say buy more merch at concerts, like I always was doing it. But now looking back, and I'm working on this oral history of this concert, I lived basically in Toledo with Detroit, like in a, basically my backyard during the early 2000s. And I really didn't take the fullest advantage that I could have. I did see some great shows and I got some good, vinyl and CDs at the time. But like, I'm not going to make those regretful decisions now. I'm not going to miss, people that I like will regret till I die that I didn't get to see live. Like I didn't see Charles Bradley even before he died. And that's like a recent regret. And I'm like, I just can't make that mistake now once concerts are back on. So I feel like that's going to be a big one.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I think all us music fans definitely are thinking about like like you're saying, like the regrets of bands we missed. And we're saying, okay, when it comes back, I'm not missing this band or this artist, and they come back around.
Yeah.
Well, but it's also,
think about it.
It's hard too, because you forget like, oh yeah, I might have to work the next day, or, I might, there might be another concert I've already committed to, and this one's like 150, but it's like, there's a lot of other things to consider, but I mean, definitely I get that sentiment there.
Yeah, like I'll be less practical, I guess. Like I was a lot more practical. I'll be less practical, but also understand that it's going into their pockets and it's perpetuating good things. And then aside from that, just want to do more personal projects. I have a photo portfolio that I've been meaning to do for years. I dabble in like some concert and cool photography that I need to license. And I definitely have been going through and editing photos that I wouldn't have touched.
I will say that recent TikTok picture, the picture of the TikTok diner,
dude,
you need to do something with that.
People are saying I need to.
It's amazing.
I need to sell prints of it.
It really is amazing.
A friend of mine was like, literally, I'll buy a print. I'm like, really? Like, I just didn't. And I was like, you know what? I should have a site. I should.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would even like to ask them if they would like to buy a print of it and try to sell it through the diner. Because I mean, it's iconic, and with that fog, man, it just came out beautifully.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just a moment in time on an iPhone of all things. It's like, but it happened. Writing this oral history of the concert has kind of lit a fire about me, and I've kind of always wanted to move in this direction. At some point, was either being a music historian, or even if it was an amateur music historian, but then that leads into something full time, like a degree. But if I'm going to do it, I need to learn an instrument. Like I've learned the basic chords in a college class of guitar. I've definitely drummed along to things, but not knew what the hell I was doing. So I feel like I know two drummers that are really awesome. And I know some software that they've, or other things they've wanted to learn. So I really think I'm going to kind of work that out this year to like learn some more music theory, learn like an instrument. So that's kind of
cool. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So now we're going to talk about Rob's album of the year chart. Rob, you've been doing this for a few years. It's really cool. We've been reading it for a few years, and just explain to the viewers what it is and how it works.
Right. So going back to 2013 now. So this would be the 8th year I've done it, I guess, inclusive. So in my day job, I work with a lot of computer scientists and data scientists, and I was starting to get interested in this world of data science and computer programming and data visualization and all the cool things you can do there. And I wanted to learn how to do it, but I didn't really have like a data set to play with that was interesting. You can find sort of sample data sets, but they're like measurements of flowers and things like that. Like it's not like the most stimulating topic for me. So it was around that time in 2013, I said, I realized sometime around late November when all the album of the year lists come out, that you could take, 20 or so websites or magazines, take their album of the year lists, just drop them into a spreadsheet. So no fancy data science, put them in according to how they ranked in all these different publications, and do a little bit of math on it to figure out sort of what was the consensus list for the year among all these different music sites. So I did it. I didn't really do anything fancy. I actually typed it all in manually, and I did that every year until this year, actually. And I just did it for myself. And there were two reasons. one, the sort of like, meta criticism perspective of like, what are people uniting around? What are the sort of weird offshoots that certain sites like, but certain sites don't like or don't rank at all? So I was kind of interested in that as a music journalist myself. But I was also, around 2013. So my first son was born in 2011. So it was starting to get into the era where I wasn't keeping up with new music as much as I had when I was, a childless young adult. So it was a good way to just catch up. And I mean, there was streaming already at that point. So any albums that popped up on the spreadsheet a lot that I hadn't heard, I could easily go to Spotify and listen to. And it really helped me kind of create my own personal list at the end of the year by filling in the gaps of things I missed over the course of the year. So it was entirely for myself. I just did it in a Google Sheet. But at some point, I decided to tweet it out, and it got like a pretty big reaction. So one of the great things about using Google Docs is you can see how many people are in the document at any one time. They gives you the little animal icons. And I would, tweet about it and then go into the sheet and just watch like every animal in the Google system like pop up across there. And people seem to really like it for the same two reasons that I started it, sort of like watching the horse race of the album of the year lists every year, but also just using it as a music discovery tool. So over the years, I've done it pretty much the same way every year, but because I work with a lot of data scientists, I found a few people to help me out and do some more complicated things. Some years I've had nice data visualizations. Some years I've come up with new like formulas for how to determine what the consensus winner is. This year, a guy, Jonathan Rockower, wrote me a web scraper finally, so I don't have to type everything in manually. I can just go to the website and it pulls all the data down and plops it right in the spreadsheet. So that has saved me a ton of time, which is very useful. But I really still just use it the same way, where it's like, every year I get a little farther removed from what music critics are listening to, and this is my chance to catch up and fill in those blind spots so that I at least know I can at least be part of the discourse if I want to be about some of these albums. Yeah,
as someone who was obsessed my whole life with music lists mainly, but all lists in general.
Joe's a big data guy.
I'm a big data guy.
Maker, which I'm a big list maker too. But
every year, I think for the past like 15, 20 years, you've made a Joe's top 10 list, and then
I work on it like all year. I mean, when I was like 12, I was making lists of, I don't know, the greatest Yankees, or I don't know, everything was lists. My mom kept a lot of this stuff too, I found. So I really appreciate this as a big resource for sure. Yeah. What were your big findings or outcomes for this year's?
Yeah. Chart? So every year, like has kind of like a theme. Like previous years, I looked a lot at like gender balance in lists. Nice. And I've definitely seen like a trend towards more and more female artists charting higher even than the 7 or 8 years that I've been doing it. I'm always interested in like genres and what genres are doing well, and whether there's solo artists versus bands that are charting highly. But this year is really like, it's if you read any of the album of the year lists, they all like have an intro about what a strange year this was. And music reflects how like strange and difficult everything was, from the pandemic to social justice issues to everything, the election to everything. So this year has been really interesting for kind of looking at that dynamic play out, because I think a lot of albums got a boost that wouldn't normally have done well in a normal year, whatever that means. Actually charted a lot higher than usual. So it's not like a very good data science-y conclusion, but to me it does feel like more intimate albums, more sort of homemade albums performed better than usual. Because normally the best, albums that get called best album of the year are like these big swings, like big ambitious albums. And a lot of the albums that I think did really well were recorded before the pandemic even set in. A lot of them came out early in the year, in the first half of the year.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think it was just like a resonance of smaller, homemade, sort of lo-fi albums tended to do really well with people who were stuck at home and by themselves. And, the music reflected that mood and that spirit. So I don't think it's going to change, but the number one top consensus album as of our recording on December 14th is Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher.
I don't know how, but I'm taller. It must be something in the water. Everything's growing in our garden. You don't have to know that it's haunted. The doctor put her hands over my liver. She told me
it's that exactly all the things I said. Like it's got a couple songs that are fleshed out and orchestrated a little bit, but it's mostly, singer-songwriter, like sparse material. And she's been neck and neck the whole time with Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters, which is what I would have thought was going to be number one, maybe just because of my pitchfork bias. But again, Fiona's album too is the same way. It's a lot of stuff that sounds like she recorded at home, sounds like she was recording with whatever was at hand, like as far as percussion and things. So, and then after that was Run the Jewels, which, if you want to get at the
Fantastic
social justice part of the year and the protests and racial themes, obviously Run the Jewels kind of seems like the most direct album to hit at that. So you can kind of come up with that narrative for everything on the list at the top, which is not typically the case. I think usually it's just a little bit more eclectic what shakes out at the top. But this year it's like you can read the story of 2020 in the albums that rose to the top.
Now, thinking about your music critique career, was there anything that kind of that really shocked you, and you were like, any lists or anything that like within the data that was like, I can't believe that this is this high or that this is this low or anything like that?
So a few years into this, I decided that I was so out of the loop on things that I can't get that judgmental about it. And when something charts a lot higher than I think, that surprises me how high it charted, I'm just like, wow, I am really out of touch, because I never would have thought this would be so popular. So I try to be agnostic about what comes up. I mean, I think every year I'm a little bit surprised. It's sort of like the legacy indie acts and how they don't really register anymore. So like this year, for instance, like Sufjan Stevens, he put out an album that I think it was called America, right? Like it was like a real, this is what I'm talking about, like a big swing. Like Sufjan does not make tiny albums. Like he makes big orchestrated complex like concept albums, and it's like around in the 50s or something like that. I'm sorry, it's called The Ascension. The single was called America. That's what I'm mixing up. But 47 on the list. Like 10 years ago that would have been an easy top 10.
Pretty shocking.
But it just kind of came and went, and sort of the usual suspects ranked it, but it didn't really cross over into other publications that maybe have sort of a younger perspective, so for whom Sufjan Stevens is now like old, like classic rock.
Damn it.
Has he had a TikTok yet, Sufjan Stevens?
I'll have to ask my daughter.
Oh God.
Find out.
Yes.
And then it's like, something like the Bob Dylan album is always interesting, because you think about, again, 10, 20 years ago, when the Paz and Jop poll was going with Village Voice, all those like 2000s Dylan albums were like almost automatic number ones or in the top 5. And this is, it's a very good Bob Dylan album, sort of in the same vein as those records. And early on, it was very high up. It looked like it was Fiona Apple or Bob Dylan were going to be duking it out. But early on in the spreadsheet process is all the British magazines. They're the first ones to release their list, and they are more rockist than the US magazines have become. So Dylan has just kind of dropped. He's at 11 now, which is still respectable, of course. And he's certainly the oldest person in the top 100, I would say. But he's not in competition at all for number one. Like he's below Haim and Perfume Genius and people like that. So, it's just, I'm past the point where I feel, bad or insulted about it. I'm just like, oh, that's interesting that this is the way things have gone. And there's a lot more pop and a lot more women. And, it's not the heyday of indie rock anymore. Like there's other things that are popular.
Yeah. I just don't know, like most of these artists, like I don't even know, like, I'm just looking right now and I'm like, who are the Soft Pink Truth? Like I've never.
Well, so
it's just like
that one I actually know. Do you know the group Matmos, electronic duo?
No.
Okay, so they were a big Pitchfork 2000s group. So the Soft Pink Truth is one of the members of Matmos. They're like experimental electronic, but Soft Pink Truth does like electronic mixed with black metal.
Oh,
so
gotcha. That's
worth
interesting.
checking out. Yeah,
I'm just shocked that how much either music I is not in my periphery, or I just don't give attention to, or I know it's all subjective, but it's like, like I was surprised honestly that the new Brendan Benson album didn't make any of the lists. I thought it was a incredibly well-crafted album, and for power pop, and especially him coming off a year with the Raconteurs, I thought he would get some run with that, but he's not even. I don't think he made a list. So. Yeah,
I end up feeling the same way as Josh in that I try to listen to a lot of music. I do a weekly radio show, and I try to play a lot of new music. I download a lot of stuff, like we're saying, from Bandcamp, And I read all these lists and I'm like, there's nothing that I listen to that I play or that I buy the vinyl of, almost nothing. I mean, besides Fiona Apple's album, which I really loved, there was like nothing else in the top like 60 or even 70.
A lot of stuff is trending
All
pop,
pop,
though, I'm noticing.
like Rob was saying,
or
very low
modern
key
hip hop. You know what I mean? Which now the bedroom pop, though, I do enjoy in that, like, say, Paul McCartney has been able to kind of like wave his flag and be like, hey, I was doing this first.
True.
Or, you know, Taylor Swift and anybody else. But no, I'm noticing, like you were saying, it's like pop kind of runs this year for sure.
Yeah, there's no rock.
Yeah, and I think that's just like that's shifting tastes in criticism. I mean, there was a big battle, you know, almost a decade ago now between the rockists and the popists. So the people that sort of like clung to this like boomer 70s classic rock canon and music that very explicitly was derived from that versus people who were, you know, more interested in what was going on the radio and took it seriously rather than as disposable music. So the popists won, which you know, my taste is more rockist, but I find it a lot more interesting a lot of times to read, you know, very thoughtful criticism of things that are massively popular, because there is a lot of interesting stuff to excavate from that. So, I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical of things like Taylor Swift going, you know, rootsy or whatever her narrative is this year with the 2 albums. And she's working with,
she's in the woods.
I think we
with her flannel on.
I think we talked about this in the last time I was on, where like the National and Bon Iver are not my favorite version of indie rock. So it's kind of funny that that's who she's like circled up with. But you know, stuff like the Dua Lipa album. So my son has gotten really into like the pop radio station here in Chicago, B96, and he just listens to it all the time and he wants to hear it in the car. And whenever a Dua Lipa song comes on, I'm like, this is basically just like Daft Punk.
Yes, totally.
Like a pop singer over it. And I like it a lot.
Me too. Yeah,
like
me
every
too.
time I see
like
her on the radio, I'm like, this is really good. I have not listened to that full album.
Yeah, me neither.
But I jumped around on it and I'm like, it seems pretty consistently high quality as the singles. So like, I'm not going to complain about that getting top 5 consensus, because you know, it's just, you know, it's equally valid to, you know, the weird Fiona Apple album that my son would never listen to.
No.
Yeah. I think there's, you know, it's also now because of the streaming aspect and because of Bandcamp and there's just, you know, this has been going on for at least a decade or two since, you know, Napster came out, just the availability of music to, you know, the wide range and just the you know, the amount of music that comes out every year is now more available and easier to access. So it's almost like, unless you're, you know, one of these critics who's probably overloaded with music just all the time, you just kind of have to pick and choose what you have time to listen to rather than what's been cultivated for you on MTV or, you know, radio, versus like if you were just part of an underground or indie scene that you getting tapes that were just handed to you, and or you go to a lot of shows and see bands. I have to like pick and choose when I have an hour to listen to an album and actually give it some time. It's tough to do. But, you know, this is why I appreciate your list a lot, because now I can go through and say like, oh, the Haim album, I was talking to Joe and Steve about, I'm like, this is great. Like, you know, I kind of knew who they were. And I was talking to my brother who's, you know, professional musician and his wife who's works for Pandora. And they're like, yeah, that first Haim album is amazing. You need to go listen to it. This new one is really good. Things are not on my radar, and these lists, I don't read Rolling Stone. I don't really read a lot of music blogs like Joe and Steve do. I need something to tell me what to listen to sometimes, or at least to check out. Like even the Fiona Apple album. My wife is a big Fiona Apple fan, and so I gave it a listen. She didn't like it. She likes her earlier stuff better, but I dug it immediately. I was like, this is amazing. This is like fantastic stuff. The amount of music out there is just so much that it's just hard to delineate what's, you know, what to listen to and what's good and what's not good.
Yeah, and sort of the great unrealized add-on to this data that I'm always trying to do every year, and we've gotten close to it a couple times when I've been working with like actual data scientists who know what they're doing, is to use it as a music discovery tool. I mean, you can do that with the spreadsheet, but it takes a little bit of manual, you know, going through the list and looking for things that might sound good based on the genre or which lists selected it. These algorithms that run behind Spotify or Pandora, you know, they know what you like and what you listen to, and so they suggest you things that sound like that. There's got to be a way to take data like this where you can put in your top 5 And if those top 5 albums are on the list, it tells you here's the next 5 albums you should listen to.
Yeah, true.
Based on similarity of like which lists liked those albums, like similarity they are in score to these other albums, what genre similarity they have. So we've done a little bit of that. Mostly it's just like data visualizations where you can pop around and select one and it shows you some other albums. But I've never quite got there. And that's what I'd really like people to use it for, because we focused on like the top of the list here, but where it really gets interesting, I mean, there's 630 some albums on it. This year. It usually ends up being 600 to 800 albums. Ooh. One tab I'll point out, which is I think a really good place for people to go to, and I assume you'll post the link somewhere.
Yes.
Sleepers?
The Sleepers tab. Sleepers? Yeah, so
Dude,
what I do there...
Really cool.
It's albums that don't appear on very many lists, but when they do appear, they're very highly ranked. So I do some simple math to figure that out.
That's great.
So those are really good because you get really eccentric albums that way, because some of the lists are very much outliers themselves, like from The Wire or from Quietus or some of these other more avant-garde covering publications. So if you go through that list, you're going to get a lot of stuff that is like totally not your thing, but then you are more likely, I think, to find something that is exactly your bag and that you want to dig into.
I want to ask Rob about the Bandcamp tweet recently they announced that they're not going to rank their lists anymore. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So this is another thing, and I should note that this is a limitation of the spreadsheet, which is I, at the very beginning, set up some loose criteria where I only take lists that are at least 50 albums.
Okay.
And I only take lists that are ranked. And I only take lists that are generated from a staff voting. So it's not just one person's top 50. I want to get like that publication's consensus to add to the overall consensus. When a list comes out that is unranked, NPR used to do this to me, where they would just list 50 albums. Then they started ranking. So Bandcamp has gone the other way. And honestly, I actually haven't included Bandcamp in previous years because they only rank things that you can buy on the service.
Oh, yeah, true.
So I don't think it's fair. It's not apples to oranges to put it with the lists that are ranking, everything in theory. I'm a huge Bandcamp fan. For the first time this year, I included Bandcamp links in the spreadsheet, which I'm very proud of. And I encourage people to use it to buy the music they like. There's Spotify links too, if you want to sample it, but go buy the records, especially this year to help people out.
Yep.
But what I'm working on with Jonathan, the data scientist who's helping me this year, is coming up with like a free-for-all tab where we just dump all the lists. So don't even worry about my criteria. Don't worry about how long it is or whether it's one person or 50 people. Just put them all in one spreadsheet and see how closely that matches up to the like more strictly defined list.
Cool.
So in that case, we would include Bandcamp and we would include like, individual New York Times critics lists and all these other things that I throw out. Come back in a couple weeks and we might have that up there as a tab and you can compare and see how that shakes out.
So it's basically looking at the frequency of the appearances of the album versus the rankings, the average or the whatever the data, the calculations show of each album, and to see how they kind of shake out and see if there's a trend line, basically.
Exactly, yeah. And the way we rank them now is a consensus score, which takes into account both average ranking and how many lists it appears on, basically, are the two main factors. So I'm trying to get consensus, right? I'm not trying to get just like the album that 2 sites really liked a lot. I want to get like sort of the overall picture of what critics like this year. So the free-for-all list will be a little more eccentric, I think, because it is going to include these like very narrowly focused picks. But I have a feeling probably at the top, it's going to look very similar, I think. I don't think it'll be that drastically different.
Yeah.
I was just curious because you were mentioning about like when these albums were released. Did you notice if there was a lot more albums released, like you said earlier on, or if there was a lot that came out post-pandemic, or like a specific time of the year that may seem different than, because I know like summertime's usually big for singles and things. So I didn't know if there was a time of the year this year where a lot of the albums from these lists came out.
So I haven't collected release date in previous years, and that's partly because this year I have a scraper that pulls it automatically, whereas in previous years I didn't want to bother looking it up for every album. But this year, almost all of the top records came out in the first half of the year, which is really interesting. I would love to be able to compare that to previous years, because my hunch is that there's actually a recency bias in other years, where things that come out in the second
Right.
half of the year do better than the first half
point.
of the year. Because it's kind of like in movies, and their Oscar season is in November,
Exactly.
December,
Yes.
Right.
because they want to release
100%.
things and be fresh in voters' minds.
Yeah.
So I think there's something similar going on in music, probably not as strong an effect, but the fact that everything at the top of the list is like June or earlier. I think Taylor Swift is the only one that's after June in the top 10. And then, of course, she had another one that came out too late to make any of the lists, which is a whole other issue. But I feel like people kind of locked in their favorites early this year. And I don't know, I haven't seen any data on this if there were like fewer albums released this year because of the pandemic or not. But that could have an issue too, where maybe people like would have released something but sat on it until next year when they can do a tour and more like
that's
traditional
exactly what I was
promo.
thinking, yeah.
So that could have been a factor too. But yeah, I think this year, if I had all the data, I bet this year would stick out as being more biased.
Interesting.
Are you posting, Rob, your data visualizations on your website, or like would you present them anywhere?
Yeah, so I need to do some website maintenance because I do have a website. It's at robmitchum.github.io. But I haven't updated it in a couple years, which is like a winter break project for me here. So maybe by the time this runs, it'll be in better shape. This will be good motivation for me to work on it. But yeah, from there you can get the links to the old spreadsheets at least, and there are a few data visualizations, and then a couple like articles that people have written about the data. People that have interviewed me in the past about the project.
Cool.
Perfect. That's awesome. Because I figured like at the end of the day, like I would love to see it evolve. If you were saying like as you're doing data scraping. There's some pretty cool like tech sites that I've seen that have done like really cool data visualizations. And now you have things that are like Last FM that you can, track your music listening. So there will be, I think, people more interested to see like your visualizations. And if you ever get to that level, if you ever Patreon it or something.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the fact that there are people who have just come to me and volunteered to help out.
Yeah.
That's how I met Jonathan this year. And we have some plans. It's been just keeping up with the list so far. But that's definitely slowing down now. I think there's only a couple more I need to add. And then we're going to try and slice it and dice it in some interesting ways.
Wait,
cool.
Excited, man.
Talking about lists, let's move on to our personal. I know that you didn't have any personal lists on your data chart, but we can talk about our personal top 5 albums or songs, or however we want to do it, our top 5 of the year. Rob, why don't you go first, and you can tell us, your thoughts and what you were listening to, and we can see if anything matches up, comes up on your chart too.
Yeah, well, so I did this for my own list, and maybe I can do it for your guys' too when you announce your winners. Where did it fall on the spreadsheet? Because like it followed what I was saying, that my taste is just getting more and more marginalized.
I already did that. Like I said,
Yeah. So I have 6 in my top 5, and I didn't rank them because to be honest, talking about ranked versus unranked, I got all the ranking out of my system when I worked at Pitchfork and was a much more active music critic. And now I don't really like doing that myself anymore. I just pick, here's the albums I like this year. So the first one I wrote down was Jeff Rosenstock. He had an album called No Dream. So Jeff Rosenstock is sort of like an older punk ska guy that kind of he's gone solo, and he's put out 3 or 4 really great albums in the last 4 years. And in 2016 he put out an album called Worry, which was my favorite album that year. It was recorded before the election, but it turned out to be like sort of the perfect sort of angry album. Angry and scared, but also in like an anthemic punk rock way record for everything that was going down that year. He kind of did it again this year with this album No Dream, which is, it's really like, it's catchy, it's fast and aggressive like all good punk rock, But it's also very funny. He's a very funny guy. So it doesn't feel like homework to listen to. It's just like a good, solid rock record that always, gets me fired up. And it came in at number 339 on the spreadsheet.
I know. I don't understand why he doesn't make lists. He gets so many good write-ups and reviews, but like when it comes to the end of the year lists, it's maybe because he releases in like random times a year, which is kind of unfortunate. But I got this record for my sister because she's a big Rosenstock fan, so I'm kind of excited to like. I hope she hasn't already bought it. That's like my big worry. But yeah.
Yeah. No, he's one of the best, and just seems like a good guy all around. And
he seems down to earth.
So and doesn't really play like an industry game. A lot of his albums are pay what you want, and he just doesn't really do the PR thing, which is a big factor, of course, in end of the year list. So my second one is pretty far away from Jeff Rosenstock. It's a guy named Ezra Feinberg. He put out an album this year called Recumbent Speech. Which is just a really beautiful sort of atmospheric space rock album.
Ooh.
Yeah, I heard it just randomly on, I think, the Aquarium Drunkard radio show.
Okay.
Which,
that's a good show.
Yeah, which they do now on Dub Lab, I think, once a month. So I was really... It grabbed me immediately. It's like it's got this like beautiful pedal steel throughout it, which I think always sells me on a record, especially if it's like a very atmospheric ambient use of pedal steel. He was in a band called Citay. I think that's how you say it, Citay, who I haven't really explored. I think they were sort of like a post-rocky band in the 2000s. So he's somebody I've been meaning to dig backwards on. But for now, this record just like hit the spot as like, here's something quiet and soothing in this year when I've got the kids to bed and I need to just unwind a little bit.
Yeah.
I picked a few Chicago records because I always love to rep my hometown music scene, which is really great right now.
Yeah.
2 records from a label called International Anthem, which is one of my favorite record labels. Everything they put out is must hear pretty much. A guy named Jeremy Cunningham, a drummer, he put out an album called The Weather Up There.
Just before your dad called me, I had a dream. All of my dreams from people who have died all take place in my kitchen for some reason.
Which is actually, it's a pretty heavy listen. It's like a concept album. His brother died in like a home invasion. So Jeremy Cunningham talks to all of his family members about how they got the news and when they heard about it. And then it has music interwoven between those interviews. So it's not an easy listen, but it's like a really moving record. And then Jeff Parker, who you might know, he's a guitarist that played with Tortoise for a long time. He has a record called Sweet for Max Brown.
Everyone moves like they've someplace to go. Build a nest and watch the world go by slow. A wise one told me they were disconsolate. There are no trapdoors if you believe in fate.
Which is dedicated to his mother. That's his mother's name. So again, sort of like a concept album about family, sort of jazz, sort of post-rock, like in that sort of Chicago sound, which is really like blending those two sounds really nicely. Sort of improvisational, sort of orchestrated and composed. Both of those, I just like, they go together for me. Like they have a very similar feel. Jeff Parker came in at number 71, so I at least got one in the top 100. Jeremy Cunningham did not appear. Ezra Feinberg did not appear, but you know, whatever. Another Chicago record, Jackie Lynn. So if you guys know Circuit Dayu, she is a Chicago artist, and she has an alter ego called Jackie Lynn. Which it's a very complicated story I won't get into. It's like basically she wears a cowboy hat and, oddly enough, a face mask way before all this went down. But she collaborated with a band called Bitch and Bajas, which is sort of ambient space rock Chicago music, and made basically like a weirdo dance pop record. So if you want to trick your teenage children into listening to something on an indie label, Jackie Lynn's album might be good. It's called Jacqueline, the album.
Definitely.
So that's a good one. And then finally, my last pick, I only listened to it once this year, the Microphones album that they put out. Microphones in 2020. So Phil,
they had a new one?
Yeah, so this kind of came and went quickly because it's very strange. It is one 45-minute track, and it's Phil Elverum, the guy from the Microphones and Mount Erie, basically telling the story of creating the Microphones 25 years ago, more or less, whenever that was. And it's just one track. It goes through a bunch of different sections. It's like incredibly moving to listen to, and it was so moving to listen to that I kind of don't want to listen to it ever again. But it was one of my favorite musical experiences of the year, was just hearing this surprise track from this guy who, like, I kind of lost interest a little bit in Mount Erie as it went into some strange places, but like the Microphones, the Glow Part 2, from way back 2001, 2002, whenever that was, one of my favorite records of all time, and just to like sort of drift into the nostalgia of that project and that album in such an unusual way and in a total surprise way was just one of the best listens I had all year. So that one is actually number 40 on the spreadsheet. So a number of people apparently liked it and probably listened to it more than I did. But that's my sort of wild card pick.
Cool. Steve, why don't you go?
Alrighty. So it was extremely tough this year to pick a top 5, especially. And I think a lot of it had to do with similar themes and also things that I think moved me more than what other years. So Run the Jewels, RTJ4 was my number 5 pick.
Get a dose of dirty code to go, been cold since cold flow. Got a wire to enlarge and I'll set a fire down below. I hang it up when you say sorry, didn't know. Probably got a year 10 to go, so let's go. I don't really know how to go slow.
Just got done walking in the snow.
Man, it's cold. Hey, you in the wrong mode, you open and close, you know holes, no go. This whole world's mo, built to the brim like Gitmo. When you think it don't get mo low, with limbo to the sticks on flow. All oppression's born alive.
And that album to me is just, it's not, in my opinion, as moving or instrumental as I think Salt ended up being, but definitely was what you could say is the soundtrack to the marches and to the movement and everything that was happening, in the vein of what we were going to go through.
Well, I mean, at the same time, you know, these themes are not new.
True.
Right.
You know, it just hit harder this year because,
it's true.
This album kind of came on my radar earlier because Primo, DJ Premier, had produced Ooh La La and used a Gangstar sample. And then number 4 for me, I know you might know this group, Rob. It's called Bent. Do you know Bent at all?
I don't.
No? Okay, so they're an electronic duo from, I believe, the UK, but I want to say at least one member is from Ireland. In the 90s, they had like a string of really good albums that my friend had always raved about, but I never really dove deep into it. And then one of the co-founders, Simon Mills, he does this just really lush, down-tempo electronic music that's kind of in the vein of Lemon Jelly, 07, stuff like that. And so this EP came out of nowhere. They hadn't made an album in like 14 years.
Sunshine going by as I fly to you, sunshine going by as I fly to you,
It's weird. It's an EP. It's like, I think 8 songs, but of those 8 songs, 6 of those songs are definitely going to be in my top 50 songs of the year. They're just that well done. And it's like, I kind of compared it just to like the new Avalanche's album as to like a warm bath. They know how to make electronic pop, if that makes sense. And if you have a chance, Simon Mills's album just got to Bandcamp, actually. It's called Harmonic Jigsaws Volume 1. And I cannot speak highly. Like, of 2018, it was definitely like in my top 10. For me, number 3 was Salt, actually. And I included, and it's kind of unfair, but I feel like it's almost, the way it was released this year was 2 albums. So the Untitled Black is, I guess, slightly ranked higher, but then Ride, the other one that just came out recently.
Answer to Kenya, taking with Uganda, remember Rwanda. I see Tanzania, from Turkey to Ghana, take care of Somalia.
Even though you changed my mind, don't give up for no one. This guy's love is free.
And I did find it on the list. And I'm a huge fan, and most of us in this room are, of good retro soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Salt is completely in that wheelhouse, and that they're this like collective that is either, bringing some hip hop beats, they're bringing some pure soul songs, they're bringing some even funk elements and throwing things together and making these interesting pieces of music.
Yeah, that was the big one that popped out from the spreadsheet to me this year too, because I had totally missed what they were doing, and then they started popping up at like number 1 on some lists. So
yeah,
I had never heard of this until the list came out. Like, who is this?
Yeah, and they're kind of like a weird anonymous collective too, which makes it even more mysterious and exciting, I guess. But yeah, some sites just totally whiffed on it. Like Pitchfork didn't even cover them, which is kind of baffling to me.
Crazy.
That was one that I listened to, I sampled on Bandcamp, and just immediately threw down for both albums.
Yeah,
I was like, one listen through, and I'm like, this is something I need to buy. So
I'm gonna have to check that one out.
I still have to check that out.
You guys will enjoy it, like, big time.
I'm sleeping on it.
Number 2 is something that Joe and I already have kind of raved about this year, but I didn't give the full attention until recently, which is Protein Threat by the OCs. Yeah, exactly. Basically,
some rock and roll.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But for me, the reason why it stood above a lot of the other rock and roll of the year, because there's some other good stuff, was that I feel like the OCs, at least every year that I've listened to them, which is now the last couple of years, they do multiple releases. They do like an anchor album, and then they do kind of like satellite albums, I guess. Yeah. And I feel like this was that, like their like anchor album. And it's just a collection of great rock music in different styles. Some of it's, kind of stoner rock. Some of it is completely like, eclectic, almost like 60s era. You know what I mean? Like, they just do a good job of keeping it flowing.
That album rocks, start to finish.
John Dwyer from the OCs, he put out another album this year called Bent Arcana. I don't know if either of you have heard that one. You can find it on Bandcamp. But it's like like an in-studio jam that sounds like an old like ECM record. It sounds pretty far away from the OCs. It's more like
still though, yeah.
But he's just incredible. He's so prolific. I can't even keep up with the OC stuff that comes out. So I gotta check.
They just released another album. Yeah,
it's nuts.
Just another. Yeah. And then my number 1 choice was Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
I won't shut up. I won't shut up. Kick me under the table all you want. I won't shut up. I won't shut up. And if I don't wanna go, leave me alone. Don't go. I spread it like strawberries. I climb like peas and beans. I've been sucking it in so long that I'm busting at the seams.
As much as other albums didn't live up to certain hype, this one did. And I think the main reason, at least for me, was the quality of the songwriting, the fact that it was more bedroom / home studio, the fact that, you could tell that she probably had moments where she woke up in the middle of the night and was like, I got to write right now and like record this into the whatever 4-track she had. Because it touched upon Me Too themes, I think it just was about her kind of breaking out from her own bad relationships, like the song Relay in the Newspaper, but just in general, the way that she uses syncopation, not just with her singing, but with like the instrumentation, to me is what set this album apart from her other stuff. She's usually very piano heavy, and this one she really worked with drum sounds, and I thought it was really interesting.
I'm going to do my 5 favorite songs of the year. I'm more into the singles lately. I feel like I'm either a teenager, a TikToker, or a 1962 music fan where it was all singles pre-album. But I try to listen to a lot of albums this year, but there weren't a lot that I loved start to finish besides like Fiona Apple, the OCs. So I figured I wanted to talk about 5 songs that really stood out that I played a lot on my show, and I played a lot in general this year. One was Neil Francis, How Have I Lived, the reprise.
These many color days, and I know for me to show. Admit that what we had was amazing, but to keep this going.
Yeah, Neil Francis is a guy that 3 of us on the show always talk about and try to pump up. This was an outtake of his song "How Have I Lived" from his album last year.
He is a Chicago guy too, right? He's from Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago.
He's like a neo soul type guy. He's like the Meters and Alan Toussaint.
Super 70s. Yeah, keyboard, piano guy, very funky. This album, this song really rocks too. It's funky, but also rocks. Has a great solo at the end. Kind of has a little bit of a COVID lyrical theme to it. But yeah, just an awesome song. That's just a great groove. His album last year was great as well. And I can't wait to hear more music. I know he's back in the studio, according to his Instagram. So I can't wait to hear more Neil Francis. You can get on Bandcamp. But that song's really cool to check out. This next one to me is like the quarantine COVID like rock song anthem of 2020. It has all the elements. It's called When Will I Hold You Again?
Yeah.
It's from Dion Lunadon, and also features vocals from Kate Clover, who's a really cool up and coming rocker. Dion Lunadon was a bass player in the noise rock band A Place to Bury Strangers. And this song is about, he wrote it during COVID, like the beginning stages, living in New York City. The lyrics are all about just, being shut down, New York City shut down. When will I see you again? So it's just a great catchy song. And on top of it, when it came out in early June on Bandcamp Friday, it was a kind of a pay what you want for it. And he matched all donations up to $1,000 on that day. And he donated 100% of the proceeds towards City Harvest and Campaign Zero, which I thought was pretty amazing.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The next is Bad Decisions by The Strokes.
Moscow, 1972. Always singing in my sleep. I will leave it in my dreams. I'm making bad decisions. I'm making bad decisions. I'm making bad decisions for you.
The Strokes are possibly my favorite band of all time, or at least in the last 20 years. I have a connection to them. I know, through the ups and downs and Julian's all the drama and the everything. But I was so happy to have finally a new Strokes album. I think it's great. It's probably the most played album I had this year, and the best title, the New Abnormal. I mean, you can't get a better title for 2020.
Yeah.
And that was of course written before COVID. But Bad Decisions to me is like the one real true like throwback Strokes song on the album. And although they got sort of sued, I guess they got sued for songwriting credits, they kind of copped the melody to Dancing with Myself from Generation X. So Billy Idol and another guy from Generation X are now on songwriting credits. I don't care. I like the original song and I like Bad Decisions. It's a great song, great rocker. It's a great like summer anthem. I was hoping the New Abnormal would rank a little higher on Rob's chart. I was checking while he was talking. It landed at 68. I was like, man, it should have been in the top 30 at least, I thought.
Yeah,
did you hear that album, Rob? I was curious your thoughts.
I haven't listened to the whole album yet, to be honest, but I did notice that one publication put it at number 1, so it would be a lot lower if it hadn't topped the Les in Rocks. I forget what that publication is. I think it's a French publication, but yeah, they really like the Strokes. They're still all in on the Strokes over there. So
nice. All right, someone's with me. It's a good album. I mean, there's a couple songs at the end that are like kind of meandering, but there's like 4 or 5 like just stellar Strokes songs. After that, a new band called Public Practice. They're a new like post-punk, very dancey band from Brooklyn. They have a song called Compromise, which I love.
You wanna live a lie, you don't wanna pick a side, you don't want to compromise. You don't wanna live a lie, it's easy. You don't wanna live a lie, it's easy.
But their album, it's kind of hit or miss, but it has cool production. It almost sounds like a modern day Blondie.
Yeah,
this song was really catchy. And my favorite song of the year, without a doubt, is Brendan Benson's Richest Man.
I got 2 beautiful babies, one hell of a good-looking wife. Got twice the love and half the money, and I feel like the richest man alive.
A perfect song for this podcast because it's like the perfect dad rock song. He's singing about his, quote, beautiful babies and a heck of a good-looking wife. The lyrics are just funny. It's like perfect like dad, like appreciation. He's getting older. He's got twice the love and half the money, but he feels like the richest man alive. Very catchy song. To me, that's in like a perfect world. It would have been a big hit, a big, huge hit. But like Josh brought up earlier, like got no love in the year-end list. But to me, that was my favorite song of the year, and a pretty good album as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I guess I'm going last, and I have probably the most boring list. You know, as usual, I don't listen to as much music as I'd like, and usually when I do, it's very much within the. I try to expand my lane, but everything seems to always stay in my lane. And while I did listen to a lot of albums this year, I felt like there weren't a lot of great albums. There were a lot of albums I liked, and I missed a couple. Like there was the Wood Brothers album that I just totally forgot existed, and I listened to the other day and immediately bought it on vinyl. So I didn't put it on there because I only gave it one listen. And there's like the new Dawes album, which I like, but it's like okay. The My Morning Jacket album, which is like it's these are okay. They're good albums, but they're just not like top.
Yeah.
And I
could have been better.
Yeah, and I had a hard time, even. Coming up with 5. I mean, 3, I didn't rank them, but the 3 that definitely were the top in my mind, we've all mentioned already, is the Fiona Apple album, the Brendan Benson, Dear Life, and Run the Jewels, RTJ4. Those albums stuck out to me this year. I gave them multiple listens. The Fiona Apple album, again, is like, it's one of those where you have to really dig into and sit down and like, as a musician, if you're a music lover, you will love what you hear from this because it's just so well crafted. The production's fantastic.
From then on, it was his big show. And you're wearing time like a flowery crown. Sitting that big cap down.
In class, I passed the time, drawing a slash for every time the second hand went by. A group of 5 done 12 times was a minute, but Shamika said I had potential. Shamika said I had potential.
Very unique.
Yeah,
too.
and I'm not a lyric person.
Stands out right away.
But when I listen to the lyrics and that whole connection to the real Shamika, like it just kind of just adds some weight to the album, and you know how personal it was, and just really shows what a great musician and songwriter she is. Brendan Benson album is just, you know, the first 2 tracks, it took me a while to like really get through and be like, is this good? Like, and you know, it took me a time, but the rest of the album is just straight up great power pop. I'm a sucker for great power pop, and just who I am. And the Run the Jewels album, I'm not like a big hip hop fan, but there are albums that I always will find and love. And this, just like Steve said, it's like an old school, like great beats, great MCs. You know, the lyrics are very poignant.
Looking for M's like I lost a friend. Jump out of my bed like where the bread. You go hold the egg. Waiter, bring the check. When we talk, we Kalishnikov. Keep us in your thoughts, fully dressed at the crack of dawn. Weapons heading off, I can hear them from the block. See them creeping through the fog. Season's greetings, now feeding season can start. Oh my God, look alive.
You know, I'm not a lyric guy. I'm a much more music guy. So hip hop, usually I connect with the beats and the sounds and the music. And this one just hits like on all cylinders. And I've also watched the Trigger Warning with Killer Mike on Netflix. So that probably added to me enjoying the album a little bit more too.
Yeah.
I kind of have 6. So, but the other two that came out this year, Jeff Tweedy's album, Love is the King. This kind of, I had a weird thing where I got into Wilco about 10 years ago and then didn't buy the Tweedy album when he did it with his son. Thought it was kind of like, you know, kitschy. It was less rocky. And then Wilco ended up going in that direction anyway. And I missed out on his last album, as I said on the last episode, Warm. I listened to his first book, you know, over the summer. And I just like, okay, I got to give his solo stuff a listen, and then listen to Gwendolyn when it came out, and it was like, oh, this is more rockin'.
That's when I start missing home. She holds my hand between her knees, and the sun shining down everywhere. If you think that's the best thing.
And it really is a well-produced album. Like, I feel like with him, you know, I love Wilco, and Wilco, you do get a soundscape that is different than this, but this really, his solo stuff really just gets down to the fact that this guy knows how to write great music. And, you know, the fact that he does it with his kids makes it even more poignant to me. And it really is just, it's great. And then the other one, it is not a rock album. And I listened to it a handful of times, but is the latest Joshua Redman album. He is a jazz saxophone player for anyone who doesn't know him. It's called Round Again. And it has Brad Meldo on piano, Christian McBride on bass, and Brian Blade on drums. If you guys don't know, Christian McBride is an absolute beast on bass. Brian Blade, I saw play with Chick Corea and John McLaughlin and Christian McBride 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And the dude is a monster on the drums. It is just a great jazz album. It is, you know, I'm not a big modern jazz guy, like, you know, but this one sounds classic. The production is clean, but it doesn't sound too clean, and it's really well done. If you just like good jazz, it's solid. It's you know, it's not smooth, it's not laid back. It's just great music. So definitely check that out. The last album, I don't know if this qualifies for a 2020 release, but I put it on there anyway, is the reissued deluxe version of the Black Pumas album, the self-titled album.
This flow on
It's amazing. I mean, like I said previously on the show, I missed the boat. Did not give them the attention they should have on the
Steve's
first go
been
around.
on the Black Pumas.
I know. I heard. I've listened to their stuff, and I knew who they were, and I just never gave them the attention. And then when I sat down and listened to this album, it's so good. It is so good.
Oh yeah.
And so
I was shocked they got nominated for album of the year, right?
That was controversial. Yeah.
Because
they didn't sell any copies of that album apparently. But yet they got in there. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it could be like Beck's album. There was a Morning Phase that everyone freaked out about.
Yeah, no one really.
That was a great album though. I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, I need to make I guess a New Year's resolution would be to listen to more music and to listen to what Joe and Steve are listening to and see if anything catches.
Not that our albums place high either.
No, but just in general, you guys, all three of you guys are talking about these bands that I've never heard of, and I just need to make a point as a music lover to open my ears a little bit more.
I will say there is an effect I've noticed, which is the curse of consistency. So bands like Woko, Jeff Tweedy, or one of my favorites, Yo La Tengo. They put out a very good to great album every 2 or 3 years, and at some point people just start forgetting how good they are, and it's not like they're making big dramatic leaps in what they sound like too, so that doesn't really register either. So Yo La Tengo, actually they did have an album this year that was kind of like an ambient side really project album that I liked a lot, but that didn't rank at all. But last year they put together I think one of their best albums, and it didn't do anything on the spreadsheet. So Mountain Goats is another band that always gets brought up. That Mountain Goats always do terrible on these spreadsheets, but they, he puts out an album every year or two as well that is always going to be, very high quality. But it's just, people go after the shiny new thing, and that's okay.
Yeah. Except Bob Dylan, who always puts out the same album, and somehow he ends up on. I mean, he's the greatest songwriter of
he's not shiny or new.
He's the greatest songwriter of modern music, but I can't. No. I don't understand it either. I don't understand how he gets. It just sounds the same to me. So. Thanks for listening to this episode, and special thanks again to Rob Mitchum for coming back to the show. Once again, we had a great time talking to him, and we hope to have him back sometime next year. If you want to check out Rob's end-of-the-year album data chart, you can click the link that is in this episode's description. Or you can go to @RobMitchum on Twitter and check out the pinned tweet, which will take you directly to the Google Sheet. You can find Rob's other work at robmitchum.github.io. And if you're a deadhead, I strongly suggest checking out his podcast, 36 from the Vault, with co-host Stephen Hayden. If you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast and tell your fellow music-loving dads or moms or whoever to check it out. And if you like or even love the podcast, go ahead and give us an honest review. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter at DadRocksPod, and we're also on Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, or any show ideas for us, or just want to give us a shout, you can email us at dadrockspod@gmail.com. Also, we have a Spotify playlist of all the music you have heard on the podcast today, which should be linked in the podcast description. We hope that you have had a wonderful and safe holiday season, and that 2021 is better for all of us than 2020 has been. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to talking to you in the new year. And remember, dads, you rock.